A very good morning to one and all. Today we are discussing about another ear disorder, that is Meniere's disease. Let me introduce the topic. It is first described by Prosper Meniere in 1861. So he is a person who described about this condition. So that name, that disorder is named under his name. His name is put in the disorder that is called Meniere's disease. It is a balance disorder. Let us discuss about the definition. Meniere's disease is an abnormal inner ear fluid balance caused by a malabsorption in the endolymphatic sac or a blockage in the endolymphatic duct. So, it is mainly affecting the inner ear. So, it is an inner ear disorder, and this condition, what is happening? There is an abnormal inner ear fluid balance is occurring. So, we all already we discussed that inside our ear there is a fluid is present. That fluid helps us to keep our balance, and also it helps to reduce the weight of the head. So the one of the main role of the inner ear is to balance the body. Okay, so this particular thing is doing by this endolymph. Okay, endolymph is a fluid which is present in the inner ear. It is mainly present in the semicircular canals. Okay, so you have to just go and review with the anatomy and physiology, so you will get a clear picture. So it is an abnormal inner ear fluid balance caused by a malabsorption in the endolymphatic sac or a blockage in the endolymphatic duct. So how the abnormal ear fluid balance is occurring? So two conditions they have mentioned here. One is malabsorption. Malabsorption means if the excess endolymph is not drained out, or another condition is blockage in the endolymphatic duct. So the fluid, it has to be circulated, or there is some changes is happening in the fluid. According to the changes, if it is not present, then more will be forming, and if it is more, then it will be drain out. So like that it is balanced. So this abnormal ear fluid balance is occurring mainly if the excess produced fluid is not draining out properly, or if the duct is if there is some obstruction is happening on the drainage duct. So if the drainage duct is obstructed, then also the fluid will not drain outside. So it can lead to Meniere's disease. It is also called endolymphatic hydrops. The other name of Meniere's disease is endolymphatic hydrops. It occurs bilaterally in about 20% of the patients. So 20% of patients you can see in bilateral involvement will be there. That means both ear. So this is a picture of normal endolymph and distended endolymph. So here you can see in the semicircular canal, you can see in the duct or a sac, you can see. So if the sac is over produced or overfilled with the endolymph, that time also distension can occur, and you can see in the duct region. Okay, this is a duct region, and here the duct region is getting obstructed, so that also the fluid will not drain out. Let us see the causes. The primary cause is unknown. The primary cause is unknown, and still it is not described. Commonly seen in adult age group between 40 and 60 years of age, equally common in men and women. Then family history. Family history is another cause. 50% of the patient have a positive family history. Then hypersecretion or hypoabsorption of endolymph, or both. So I told in the definition also it mentioned it detailedly, that is hypersecretion if the endolymph is produced more than the normal level, or hypoabsorption. Hypo means reduced. Okay, so if it is not absorbing properly, or if it is not drain out properly, that can lead to Meniere's disease. Then deficit membrane permeability. If the membrane permeability means the ability to cross the membrane. Okay, the fluid ability to cross the membrane. So if the membrane permeability is distorted, or some kind of destruction is occurring, then allergy, any kind of allergy, viral infections, hormonal imbalance, and mental stress. So these are the possible causes which can lead to Meniere's disease. So the main cause or primary cause is unknown. Then certain incidents they have mentioned here. Commonly you can see in adult age group between 40 and 60 years. Equally seen in men and women. There is no difference in gender. Then 50% of the patient have positive family history. So those are the instance you can see in the 50% of person affected having a positive family history. Then other than this one, the causes are hypersecretion or hypoabsorption of endolymph, deficit membrane permeability, allergy, viral infection, hormonal imbalance, and mental stress. Let us see the types. There are two types are there. First one is cochlear Meniere's disease and second one is vestibular Meniere's disease. So the inner ear mainly present with mainly three organs, that are vestibules, cochlea, and semicircular canals. These are the three main things you can see in the inner ear. Let us see the types one by one. Cochlear Meniere's disease is recognized as a fluctuating, progressive sensory neural hearing loss associated with tinnitus and oral pressure in the absence of vestibular symptoms. So here, cochlear Meniere's disease means it is recognized or it is identified as fluctuating. Fluctuating means keep on changing. Progressive sensory neural hearing loss. So this cochlear Meniere's disease can lead to progressively. It can lead to sensory neural hearing loss. The result of this cochlear Meniere's disease will be sensory neural hearing loss. Associated with tinnitus will be the ringing sound and oral pressure, the a feeling of a fullness in the ear in the absence of vestibular symptoms. Then second one is vestibular Meniere's disease. It is characterized as the occurrence of episodic vertigo. So episodic vertigo will be there. There is an uneasiness, okay, or imbalance will be there. Along with that imbalance, the person will feel some kind of vomiting or nauseating feeling. So that is called vertigo, associated with oral pressure but no cochlear symptoms. So in this vestibular Meniere's disease, there is no cochlear symptoms like any hearing loss or anything, but the person will experience oral pressure, heaviness, or a fullness in the ear, and also vertigo, episodic vertigo. Next, we will see about the pathophysiology. Obstruction of endolymphatic duct or sac can lead to hypersecretion or hypoabsorption of endolymph, or sometimes both, which leads to excessive accumulation of endolymph, leads to distension of membranous labyrinth and endolymphatic sac, leads to increase in pressure and rupture of the inner membranes, which result in loss of auditory and vestibular function and result in vertigo, tinnitus, and hearing loss. So this is a pathophysiology. So due to the etiological factors, primary causes are unknown. Then there are some precipitating or aggravating factors we have seen. So due to this factor, what is happening? First of all, obstruction of endolymphatic duct or sac is occurring. So in the beginning, we have seen a picture there, or you can review with anatomy and physio. You keep your anatomy textbook with you, so you can get an idea about the endolymphatic duct. So first, because of the causes, endolymphatic duct or sac is getting obstructed. So because of the obstruction, hypersecretion or hypoabsorption of endolymph or both will take place. So once the duct is obstructed, then inside the circular canals, hypersecretion of or hypoabsorption of endolymph can occur. Either it will be produced in excess or it will absorb in less, okay, or it will lessly absorb. That can lead to excessive accumulation of endolymph. So if it is not absorbing properly by the membranous labyrinth, or if it is more secreted, so in both cases what is happening, ये बाहर भी नहीं जाएगा और ज़्यादा प्रोड्यूस हो रहा है. सो व्हाट इज हैपनिंग, excessive accumulation or excessive accumulation of endolymph is occurring in the in endolymphatic sac. So because of this one, what is happening, distension of membranous labyrinth. So once the endolymph is excessive produced in the semicircular canal, it can lead to distension. It will put pressure over the membranous labyrinth and endolymphatic sac. Then what is happening, increase in pressure and rupture of inner membranes. So once the pressure is keep on increasing, it can rupture the inner membranes. Okay, once the pressure is increased, it will rupture the inner membranes, can lead to loss of auditory and vestibular function. So auditory means loss of hearing, vestibular function means there will be some vertigo, then imbalance. So you can see in that vertigo, tinnitus, and hearing loss. So these are the auditory and vestibular function. Okay, auditory function means hearing loss will be there, and vestibular function means vertigo and tinnitus. So this is about pathophysiology of Meniere's disease. I hope you understood. So you can see here in Meniere's disease what is happening. Duct is getting swelling, so that can lead to imbalance. Then excess fluid cause swelling and pressure. So you can see that membranous labyrinth is getting swelled and excessive pressure you can see. So that can lead to distorted information travels to brain. So that yellow color, that orange color thing you can see in that is an cochlear nerve. So with this cochlear nerve, some abnormal information will travel to the brain. Let us see the signs and symptoms. Mainly, here is auditory loss is there, and vestibular loss, function loss will be the vestibular function loss means vertigo, tinnitus, imbalance will be there, and hearing loss will be there in the auditory function. So then you can see sudden dizzy spells. Okay, the person will get some dizziness. Then muffled hearing or hearing loss, then tinnitus or ringing in the ear. Okay, so these are the signs you can see. Other than this one, fluctuating progressive sensory neural hearing loss. So it is fluctuating, keep on changing, and progressive sensory hearing loss, day by day the hearing loss will be increasing. Then tinnitus will be the vertigo, and vertigo is accompanied by nausea and vomiting and nystagmus. Then vertigo lasts 2 to 4 hours and followed by dizziness and unsteadiness. So these are the things accompanied by vertigo. The person will feel more discomfort. Then warning signs are headache. Person will having headache, especially constant headache, feeling of pressure or fullness in the ear. Then behavioral changes like irritability, depression, withdrawal. This kind of behavioral changes we can, because if something happened to our ear, it is very difficult to manage the situation, because you can't access the area, and you're having irritability like some kind of uneasiness will be feeling, something is stuck in the ear, some kind of irritation. So it's very difficult to manage. So more irritation will be there, and people will be feeling more depression about their condition, and also withdrawal. Okay, it may be physical or social withdrawal will be there. Let us see the diagnostic measures. First of all, history collection. Proper history should be taken, because one of the primary cause is unknown, and one of the cause is familiar history. So you have to take a proper history collection. Physical examination should be done properly. Then audiogram to identify the type and magnitude of the hearing loss. So we have discussed that the result of this Meniere's disease will be vestibular and loss of vestibular and auditory function. So with the help of audiogram, we can identify the type and magnitude of hearing loss, whether it is temporary or permanent, whether it is sensory or conductive. Then CT or MRI, it will helps to identify the area where it is affected, and also helps to evaluate the extension of disease, whether it is affected outside the inner ear. Then electronystagmogram to evaluate the oculomotor and vestibular systems to differentiate the causes of vertigo, tinnitus, and hearing loss of unknown origin. So with the help of electronystagmogram, we can evaluate the oculomotor and vestibular systems, okay, which is helps for balancing to differentiate the causes of vertigo, tinnitus, and hearing loss. So with the help of this test, we can identify whether it is due to Meniere's disease or some other underlying unknown origin. Then next is a management, mainly medical management, in that pharmacological therapy and dietary management is there. Let us see one by one. Pharmacological therapy including antihistamines to suppress the vestibular system. Example is meclizine. So antihistamine we are giving because one of the cause will be allergy. So first we have to give the anti-allergy. It will suppress the vestibular system. So it will helps to reduce the formation of fluid. Then tranquilizers to control vertigo. The person is having vertigo, so in order to control that, we can give tranquilizers, example diazepam. Then antiemetics. So along with the vertigo, we have seen that nausea and vomiting sensation will be there. So antiemetic, we have to provide promethazine or Phenergan to control the nausea and vomiting and the vertigo because of their antihistamine effect. Then diuretics to relieve symptoms by lowering the pressure in the endolymphatic system, hydrochlorothiazide and triametrine. Okay, diuretics, it helps to reduce the fluid level in the ear, and also it will helps to reduce the pressure in the endolymphatic system. Then vasodilators, example papaverine and hydrochloride vasodilators will helps to increase the permeability of the membrane, and so that more absorption will be takes place. Then avoid aspirin and aspirin containing medication. Aspirin may increase tinnitus and dizziness. So you should avoid administration of aspirin and aspirin containing medication. It can increase tinnitus and dizziness. If not responding to drugs, then we have to go for ablation therapy. It is an intratympanic injection of gentamicin is being used to cause ablation of the vestibular hair cells. So, if the person is not responding to your pharmacological or medical management, then we can go for a therapy, that is ablation therapy. That is also we are using antibiotic gentamicin we are using, and is being injected into the tympanic membrane, and it will can cause ablation of the vestibular hair cells. Ablation means destroying. It will destroy the vestibular hair cell, so that afterwards the fluid will not be accumulated in the vestibular region. So this is ablation therapy. Next is dietary management. In that, low sodium diet we should be given, because sodium can lead to retention of fluid or accumulation of fluid in your body. So low sodium diet should be given. The amount of sodium is a factor that regulates the balance of fluid within the body. Sodium and fluid retention disrupt the delicate balance between endolymph and perilymph in the inner ear. That's the reason we are giving low sodium fluid, because it can lead to fluid retention. Then limit foods high in salt or sugar. Eat meals and snacks at regular intervals to stay hydrated. We have to keep the person always hydrated. Limit intake of coffee, tea, and soft drinks. Avoid caffeine because of its diuretic effect. So, caffeine or coffee can increase the fluid or it's a diuretic, increase the urination. So, it can lead to elimination of fluid from the body. Then limit alcohol intake. Alcohol may change the volume and concentration of the inner ear fluid and may worsen symptoms. So we have to advise the patient to stop or limit alcohol intake, and it can lead to changes in volume and concentration of ear fluid. Then avoid monosodium glutamate, which may increase symptoms. Monosodium glutamate is a food preservative, or you can see you can hear about something which is present in the Chinese food and all. So that particular thing is called monosodium glutamate. It's a coming in a salt formation, and this can lead to increase of symptom, because it is a sometimes it may be a allergen. So avoid monosodium glutamate. Then next is surgical management. The surgical treatment of Meniere's disease is aimed at eliminating the attacks of vertigo. So hearing loss, tinnitus, and oral fullness may continue. So the surgical procedures are endolymphatic sac procedure and vestibular nerve section. So in this Meniere's disease, mainly we are doing surgical management to eliminate the attack of vertigo, because it is a serious condition. Because once a person balance is lost, then they can fall, or some other injury also can occur. So in order to prevent the vertigo, we have to go for the surgical management. But after the surgery also, maybe hearing loss and tinnitus will be continue. So let us see the procedure. First one, endolymphatic sac decompression. First line surgical approach to treat the vertigo of Meniere's disease. RCT simple, safe, and can be performed on an outpatient basis. Outpatient basis means daycare procedure, or the patient no need to take an admission, or there is no need of admission. Through a post auricular incision, means outside the auricle region or behind the pinna, we are making an incision. A shunt or drain is inserted in the endolymphatic sac, and fluid is drained into subarachnoid space, thus release of pressure or on the endolymphatic system in the labyrinth. So in this procedure, what we are doing means we are making an incision on the post auricular incision is making, and a shunt or drain is inserted in the endo. With the help of shunt or drain, we are draining the endolymphatic sac fluid into the subarachnoid space, so that the pressure inside the endolymphatic system will release, and the person will relieve from vertigo or balance disorder. Second one, vestibular nerve sectioning, performed by a translabyrinth approach or in a manner that can conserve hearing. suboccipital or middle cranial fossa. We are choosing suboccipital region or middle cranial fossa. Through that approach, we are approaching the we are approaching the inner ear. Depending on the degree of hearing loss, cutting the nerve prevents the brain from receiving input from the semicircular canal. So, in order to prevent from vertigo, there is some when the fluid is changing inside the inner ear, that particular changes is interpreted or it is communicated to the brain with the help of the nerves. Okay, so after once the brain is getting the information, then only the person will go for imbalance or some symptoms of vertigo. So here what they are doing means they are cutting or they are resecting the particular nerve which is transmitting or receiving the input of the semicircular canal, so that the person will relieve from this kind of vertigo. Okay, so brain dissection is completely they are discontinuing the brain nerve uh, conduction or transmission. Next is an AC manager. Assess the severity and frequency of attack. Any associated ear symptoms. We have to assess the severity and frequency of attack. How much severe it is, or how long it is, or how what are the intervals of the each attack. Then acute vertigo, provide bed rest, sedation, antiemetics. So sudden vertigo means we have to provide bed rest. Then sedation can give or antiemetic to helps to relieve from sudden vertigo. Then encourage patient to lie down during attack in safe place. So if they are feeling some kind of uneasiness or some kind of vertigo symptoms, tell them to lie down in a safe place. Advise patient to avoid food that cause allergy, especially mono sodium glutamate content food should be avoided. Maintain the prescribed low salt diet. They have to always maintain prescribed low salt diet. So then impaired comfort related to impairment in auditory function or vestibular function. Then impaired auditory sensation and perception related to altered state of ear. Risk for deficient fluid volume related to increased fluid output, altered intake. Risk for injury related to impaired equilibrium, and anxiety related to threat to changes health status. So these are the nursing diagnosis which we can follow in this Meniere's disease. Impaired comfort related to impairment in auditory function or vestibular function. You had to assess the impairness of comfort, then auditory sensation perception, then risk for deficit fluid volume should be monitored and should be maintained. Then it risk for injury related to impaired equilibrium, anxiety related to threat to changes. So this is an assignment for you. You have to make the proper intervention and diagnosis for this nursing diagnosis. You have to make the care plan. So this all about the topic Meniere's disease. So far we discussed about how the name came. So it is discovered by a person, and that person name come for this disease, Meniere's disease. And we have seen the definition. Then we have seen what are the incidents and etiology for Meniere's disease. Then what are the types? Mainly two types are there: cochlear and vestibular. So two types we have discussed. Then what is a pathophysiology? Then signs and symptoms, how we can diagnosis. Then about the treatment, mainly medical treatment, surgical and dietary modification is there. Then we have seen the nursing management. So this all about the topic Meniere's disease. I hope all of you understand about the topic. If you are having some doubt, you can feel free to contact me. Have a nice day. Thank you.